You know that feeling when you scroll through a dozen gaming laptops, each one flashing ultra-high refresh screens and best-in-class GPUs, only to end up with a machine that sounds like a jet engine in a coffee shop and barely lasts 2 hours on a marathon session? I've been there, and the last thing I want is to drop a big chunk of cash on a laptop that looks gorgeous on the listing but turns into a compromise the moment I plug it in for real play. That's why I'm breaking down the Lenovo Legion Pro 7i 16-inch today, the kind of deep dive that helps you avoid the "it looked good online, but regret." Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the audience. This isn't a budget-friendly entry-level device, and it isn't a lightweight travel notebook either. The Legion Pro 7i is built for gamers who also dabble in heavy content creation or AI-centric workflows, people who need a workstation that can launch a AAA title, render a 4K video, and still have headroom for a few Chrome tabs. If you're the type who plays a couple of indie games on weekends and expects a battery that lasts a full day in a CAF, you'll probably feel the trade-offs more sharply than you'd like. The first thing you notice out of the box is the 16-inch OLED panel. The colors are truly vivid deep blacks, punchy reds, and a wide color gamut that makes HDR gaming feel immersive. I tested it with Cyberpunk 2077 at native 144 Hz, and the display kept up without any noticeable ghosting. In practical terms, that means you can spot a sniper's outline a fraction of a second earlier than on a standard IPS screen, and the contrast makes darkroom sessions less eye-strained. The downside? OLED panels are notoriously power-hungry. On the built-in 80 Wh battery, I saw roughly 2.5 hours of continuous gaming before the charge indicator dipped into the orange zone. If you need a laptop that can survive a full day of classes and a few gaming sessions, you'll want to keep a charger handy or accept the shorter unplugged time. Heat is the next big conversation. Lenovo markets the Legion ColdFront cooling system as a solution for extended gaming sessions, and the real-world test lives up to that claim. The dual-fan setup, combined with a vapor chamber-style heatsink, kept the CPU temperatures hovering around the low 80s C during a 45-minute run of Red Dead Redemption 2 at max settings. That's impressive for a thin 16-inch chassis, but there's a catch: the fans spin up aggressively. In a quiet room, you'll hear a steady whoosh that can be distracting if you're recording a stream or trying to focus on voice chat. The fan curve is aggressive by design. It favors performance over silence, so expect the laptop to become noticeably louder the moment you push the RTX 5080 to its limits. Keyboard feel is another area where the Legion Pro 7i earns points. The keys have a decent travel distance, a firm actuation point, and an RGB backlight that you can customize per zone. I found the tactile feedback comparable to a mid-range mechanical keyboard, which is a pleasant surprise for a laptop. The layout includes a dedicated game mode button that disables the Windows key to prevent accidental alt-tabbing mid-match, a small but thoughtful feature for competitive players. However, the keyboard sits fairly low on the chassis, so if you have large hands you might feel a bit cramped during long typing sessions. Portability is a mixed bag. At 5.4 pounds and a thickness of just under 0.8 inches, the Legion Pro 7i is lighter than many desktop replacements, but it's still a solid feel machine that won't slip into a backpack meant for a 13-inch Ultrabook. I carried it from my living room to a friend's house, about a 30-minute walk, and it felt manageable, but I wouldn't recommend it for daily commutes on public transit. The trade-off here is clear: you get a desktop-class GPU in a laptop form factor, and you pay for the added mass and the larger power brick that comes with it. Now, about the storage and memory. With 64 GB of DDR5 RAM and a 2 TB PCIe Gen 4 SSD, the machine handles multitasking like a champ. I opened Photoshop, launched a game, and ran a virtual machine simultaneously, and the system never stuttered. The SSD's read/write speeds are fast enough that level loading in games felt instantaneous, and large video files transferred in seconds. The only practical downside is that the SSD is not user-replaceable without opening the chassis, which can be a concern if you plan to upgrade storage down the line. For most users, the stock 2 TB will be ample, but it's something to keep in mind if you foresee needing massive archives. Pricing is where the decision gets tricky. The Legion Pro 7i sits in the high-end bracket, often priced above $2,500 depending on configuration. When you compare that to building a desktop with a comparable RTX 5080, a comparable CPU, and a 2TB SSD, the desktop will likely be cheaper, and you'll get better cooling and upgrade flexibility. The laptop's value proposition, therefore, rests on its mobility and the fact that you get a Windows 11 Pro license pre-installed, which,